Well, hello everyone, and a very, very warm welcome to the latest Evenbreak Explores. This is a series that we run for employers and other people who might be interested in disability inclusion in employment. And it's a little bit different to our usual webinars or workshops or roundtables, in that it's very much more an informal chat, really, with someone who has expertise in a particular area. And I'll go on to that in a moment. But just to say that we have a BSL interpreter with us, and we also have live captions. So if you need that facility, please do put on live transcript. If you're watching this on a recording, the subtitles will be available. Nobody's specifically asked for these as access needs, but we like to provide them by rote anyway, because we think it's good practice to make sure that all of our events are accessible as much as is possible. And of course, if people ask for additional access needs, we would look at those as well. But we think that BSL and live captioning is something that should be offered automatically without people having to request it. So today we're talking about the Disability Employment Charter. And I'm really, really pleased to have with me the wonderful Kamran Mallick, who is the CEO of Disability Rights UK. And we've been working together for quite some time now, and I've done a number of events together, but Kamran is going to be great on this particular subject. Do you just want to introduce yourself, Kamran?
Yeah, of course. Hi, Jane. Thank you so much. Good to be here again. And my name's Kamran. I'm Chief Exec of Disability Rights UK. I joined the organization back in 2017. And I guess my background, I've been working in this sector, in kind of non-profit charity sector, pretty much my whole career and part of the kind of disability movement, disability world, disability work area for pretty much the whole of my career. I spent the first 5 years of my career working for a local authority, then came to this sector and haven't looked back. And as a disabled person myself, the whole idea of, finding work, I have personal experience of all the challenges I experienced in my early days of trying to find that first job. And then how do I progress and how do I build a career? So I've experienced all of the kind of barriers. And then just through the work that I've always done, just engaged with lots of disabled people of all different kind of backgrounds, cultures, and experiences, lived experiences of disability, looking for work and just the challenges and barriers that they've faced. So it's such an important aspect of our work and something I'm personally passionate about, and that hence a real supporter of Evenbreak and you, Jane.
Thanks, Kamran. Yeah, I mean, we both have that lived experience and recognise the importance of lived experience. And to anyone who's on the call, if you have any, this is very informal, so if you have any questions or you want to join in, put something in the chat or the Q&A or whatever. And, if you've got anything to add or questions or comments, please do just join in. As you can see, it's quite informal. So I think, we're signatories in the Charter because, obviously disability equality in employment is what Evenbreak is all about. We're trying to help employers become more inclusive and accessible, and we're trying to help disabled candidates navigate around the barriers that they face when they're looking for employment, very much like you do too. And, for us, being a signatory was really important, but you were there at the beginning and the founding of the whole Disability Employment Charter. What prompted that? What caused a group of you to come together and develop this charter?
Really good question. Why did we do it? It's big, I guess, and I'm sure you experienced this as well, Jane, for all the time that I and our organizations that I've worked with have been in this work, we've talked about this idea of the difference in employment rates of disabled people and non-disabled people, and we call it the disability employment gap. And for all of my years, and I've been in this work for over 25 years, it's been hovering around the 30%, and it just doesn't shift. And governments come and have all these ideas of what they're going to do and how they're going to shift it. And the current government has talked about 1 million more disabled people in work. And 2 weeks ago, they suddenly announced we've got 1 million more people in work. But actually, when you delve into the data, it shows that actually, you can do a lot with numbers, can't you? You can make them look whatever you want. When you actually look at the gap, it's pretty much still the same. I think the current data is 28.5%. So we've shifted about 1.5%. And if we, and it's frustrating because if what you're seeing is just generation after generation of disabled people just being let down consistently. And if we keep moving at this 1.5% every 10, 15 years, it'll be another 100 years before we ever get anywhere near this kind of target. So we at Disability Rights UK will often speak about the employment gap and some of the ideas behind how do we address those issues from a both policy and legislative issue, but also what can businesses be doing to create a better landscape, a more inclusive, accessible landscape. And it kind of is those conversations. About 2 years ago, we were working with some of the Unison, and we're presenting at one of their events. And it just, that was the idea behind it. It was just a few organizations talking about, we keep talking about these issues. What's the fundamental root cause to some of these problems, and where can our governments try and shift something? What can they be doing that will really shift it? And that's where it came from. This idea that if we come up with a few simple things that government could do, none of these, when we look at them in a minute, none of these are earth-shatteringly new. They're just obvious stuff that actually we think if we just package them together, put in place, there's evidence that those things will shift it. And Warwick Business School has been our kind of academic partner who've brought in all the data and the research and the evidence behind some of this, and also looking at it around the world, because there's other good practice that we can often learn from other parts of the world. And it's not to say there are good things that we're doing in the UK. So access to work is an amazing provision.
Absolutely.
If we could just make, if we could just make some small changes to it, it would just be this amazing service, amazing support element to enable people to just flourish in their employment. And when I talk to both friends and colleagues in other parts of the world, and I tell them about access to work, mostly they're blown away by the fact that we even have something like that. Particularly my colleagues in America say, well, no,
it should be universal, really, shouldn't it? It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and what they rely on is if you've got a strong, confident employer, they will fund some of these things. The government won't in those countries. So we have some really good practice that we just need building on. So that's where it came from. And then the idea was we need to get more and more people to back this idea. And of course, Evenbreak was there at the beginning as well, which is fantastic. We've just gone over the 100 mark. So we've got over 100 organizations and companies, and it's some big companies as well. So McDonald's have signed up to it as well recently. So we want a combination of, organizations from the third sector, not profit sector, but also private and public organizations, because this is about everybody. So that's a little bit about what it's about.
Yeah, and I think the reason for me it has credibility and why I was keen for us to be a signatory is because it was designed and developed by people with lived experience and based on evidence. Whereas I think often some government policies can be, maybe formed by very well-meaning people, but who maybe don't have that lived experience and don't really understand that, the genuine barriers that disabled people face. And as you say, I think, access to work and disability confident are based on the right premise. So, access to work says, occasionally disabled people will need additional support, which might cost money. And rather than putting employers off because they have to spend that money, we'll, pay towards that. And disability confident for me has it's built on the right premise, which is the barriers that are stopping disabled people getting into work are often employers, not intentionally. I don't think any employer thinks, what should we put in place to stop disabled people getting in? But they're just barriers that people haven't thought about. So I think disability confident is based on the right premise as well. It's just about getting those two great initiatives to work effectively and smoothly for people. Some of the other things that governments have done, I think, over the years, I don't know whether you'd agree, are actually based on, for me, what are the wrong premise. So it might be, disabled people don't work because they're lazy and can't be bothered. So what we'll do is we'll give them sanctions if they don't do what they should do to get into work. And actually, as a disabled person, we know that people can do everything they positively can to get into work and still not succeed because the barriers are there in society with inaccessible transport or working practices or recruitment processes or whatever it is. So the wrong premise is let's starve disabled people into submission and then they'll go and get jobs. That just isn't, that's never going to work.
Absolutely. And that point you said right at the beginning when you was just saying was the important thing about both the charter and the way of working is that it's driven by disabled people's lived experience. It's us saying, this is our experience and this is how we see we can overcome it if others played their part in making that happen. And there is just a natural, in our country and probably around the world, quite a negative narrative about who we are as people. This kind of very polarized opposites of either just don't want to work, and hence the
scroungers.
Yeah, and hence the whole idea that, well, if we sanction you, you will suddenly get into work. And actually, the data shows that hasn't worked. It doesn't work. Of course, it wouldn't work. And then you've got the polar opposite of that. These Olympians and Paralympians who are achieving amazing things. If only all of us did that.
Yes, the inspiration porn bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always think, well, how many people run like Usain Bolt? Well, not many. Hence, that's why he's so amazing at what he does. But that is not about the narrative of non-disabled people, that you have to be a Olympian, and yet for disabled people that is very much the story. And so I think you're absolutely right. Employers don't sit back and think, oh, what can I do today to make it really difficult? I think employers are human beings and we all live in this community and society, and we absorb some of the negative rhetoric about disability. And so it's that fear of the unknown. It's kind of, oh yes, I want to employ the right people, and how will I manage that? How will I deal with that? And these assumptions about disabled people taking extra sick leave and not being productive, just, I know, and I'm sure the people that work with you know that just isn't the case. There's no evidence. There's no evidence.
I can understand, if I was an employer and I didn't know any better, and I thought there was a particular group of people who were going to be really expensive to employ, going to be less productive than others, going to take up an awful lot of time, going to be a real problem, I wouldn't want to employ them either. It's just that those narratives are based on myths rather than reality. And I think, part of it is about changing that narrative, isn't it? About saying, look, I know, and you do, thousands and thousands of disabled people. I know one or two Paralympians. I don't know any benefit scroungers or people who don't want to work, with the right support. Most of the disabled people I know, I think, are the same as disabled people everywhere, are just ordinary people trying to get on with their lives that just face additional barriers.
Yeah.
Whether that's transport or whatever it is. But we all have completely different range and diverse range of skills and talents and qualities and personalities and backgrounds and education. And, we're no different in that respect to anybody else. It's just that we then face additional barriers for whatever reason. And
absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. And like yourself, pretty much all the people I know who are disabled people all want to work or are working, would like to have more work, would like to have more hours or better pay. They want exactly the same things as kind of my non-disabled friends. But what I do see is just a difference when I compare parallels to say, how have my non-disabled friends progressed in their careers versus disabled friends who've just got stuck somewhere or hit that kind of ceiling within their career and just can't quite get beyond it, to those who have really struggled to just even get into work and have just faced significant barriers, kind of the whole journey of whether that's through education, but then leading into employment.
And of course, that compounds itself, doesn't it? Because if, there's a lot of research that says if a young disabled person doesn't get employed of some description by the time they're 24, they're unlikely to ever work.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say that about non-disabled. That's not the case for non-disabled people.
That's such a shocking stat, though, isn't it? If just by 24 you've not managed to get any gainful employment, that could potentially be the route for your rest of your life. That's just... It's quite horrifying.
What a waste for society. There's that talent that's gone to waste, but also that person is going to be on benefits. That's, a burden on taxpayers, and nobody wants that. That individual person doesn't want that. It's such a waste of talent.
So, I mean, it's absolutely, so it's a win-win, isn't it? It's a win for our community. It's a win for businesses because by bringing in that diverse talent pool, you just have a business that's more talented, more creative, more kind of thinking diversely, and therefore producing better goods or services or whatever they might be doing. They just end up being better things because you've got that diversity of thought in your organization. You're not all from the same kind of university or same background. You've got a mixture, and there is just such amazing, talented people in the disabled community as there are in non-disabled community, but the barriers we face. And, I was saying at the beginning, I faced significant barriers when I remember my first 18 months of looking for work. I just got nowhere. I just absolutely nowhere. I would fill in applications. I'd go to recruitment agencies, and, everyone was very nice and polite, but I didn't want that. I just wanted a job.
A job. Yes.
I didn't need to make friends from them. But I literally never got anywhere. I didn't get a single interview in that 18 months of trying. And that, so many years later, to know that people are still going through the same thing kind of disheartens you a bit, to say, well, we've got to change something. And hence this idea of these organizations coming together, designing this employment charter.
Absolutely. And we talk about the disability employment gap being, stubbornly around the 30%, give or take. And we talk about how they calculate those figures, which is always, a bit iffy. But actually, for some groups, it's far higher than that. If you look at people with learning disabilities, the gap is huge, or people with autism, it's massive. So that 30% really is the average of disabled people who, the sort of being twice as unlikely as non-disabled people to be unemployed actually grows hugely with certain conditions. And and actually we're doing better than a lot of other countries, as you said. So that's pretty shocking, isn't it, when I think we've got such a long way to go, and then you look globally and you think, blimey, as a society we're pretty much failing here. But I think the Disability Employment Charter is, essentially what it is, it's a list of suggestions for government for what they could put into policy that would actually, if they did all of them, would make a huge difference and really narrow that gap quite rapidly. But, when you look down those 9 suggestions, there are things that businesses can do without waiting for the government to say, you've got to do this. And for me, the employers certainly that we work with at Evenbreak don't do things because it's legislated for them to do it. They do it because they recognize that they're missing out on talent if they don't, and that their organizations are going to benefit by having more diverse talent within it. And that obviously always includes disability. And so the more enlightened organizations are not waiting to be told by government, you've got to be mandated to do this and you'll be punished if you don't. They're doing it because they recognize that we're going to benefit from this. Why wouldn't we do it? Legislation is irrelevant. It's about how do we attract and retain the very best talent that there is out there.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely agree. It's great. So any of your employers who are here now or who are going to listen to this later, if you're already doing some of this, wonderful. What I would say is, maybe you want to come and become a signatory of the charter to say, actually, we back this. Because it's the right thing to do. And you're absolutely right. Legislation is always the absolute minimum you should be doing. But of course, you should be going way beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the benefits to be gained, if you just do minimum legislation compliance, you're probably not going to gain very much. But if you do, proper inclusive practice, then you're going to reap all of the benefits. And that's kind of what it's about. But, as I say, as I was looking through the 9 suggestions, some of them are specific to government, like, the access to work scheme, as we talked about, is great. But actually, at the moment, you might have to wait 3 months for your, assistive technology or whatever it might be that you've ordered. And in that 3 months, the disabled person that needs that is not able to be productive, conditions might be made worse. And so we need to kind of make it less bureaucratic, easier to access. We still have to claim by post, we can't do it online. Things like that need to be, tightened up. But lots of the other things on the charter are things that we should be doing anyway as businesses. It's not just about what government do, it's what we can do as employers.
Absolutely. And the first one, I don't know if, people who are listening I've got a link to the charter, but I'm sure you can send it out.
Yeah.
But the first one is employment and pay gap reporting. So that's literally doing what it says, is any employers with 250 or more employees to publish data annually on the number of disabled people that the organization business employs in their workforce, and kind of the disability pay gap and the percentage of disabled employees within each kind of pay structure, because we want to see where are disabled people in employment. So are disabled people largely in the entry level roles, or middle management, or senior manager, and so on. So it's not just about reporting on the numbers of disabled people, but what pay scales they're on. It's that whole old kind of saying, isn't it? What gets measured gets done. So if we start measuring it, we can start to see what the picture really looks like and try and shift it.
We absolutely know that works, don't we? Because the year that the gender pay gap reporting was made mandatory,
yeah,
everybody was talking about gender pay gap. It was on the news all the time. Employers were talking about it. It was in their targets. It was in their business plan, all the rest of it. And so it really did focus minds, didn't it? So we know that making this compulsory really does galvanize action. And we've done it with gender. There's a lot of talk around doing it with race. But as ever, disability is the one that kind of gets left to the end.
Yeah.
And for me, disability is no more important than race or gender, but it's certainly equally as important. And when we talk about intersectionality, which group do you fit into if you're, a person of color and you're disabled and you're female? It's important generally, isn't it? So if we can make this disability as important in terms of reporting as we do gender and race, then we're not always going to be the poor relation. And actually people are going to think, actually that is a group of people we haven't thought about yet, and maybe we should. And let's look at our stats. They're not as good as they should be. What can we do? And it actually just focuses the mind a bit, I think, on, if you don't know what the current situation is, you don't know if you're improving or getting worse, or if what you're doing is making a difference. So that monitoring is crucial.
The gender pay reporting, as you just outlined, demonstrates it absolutely perfectly, doesn't it? Is when you start measuring it, you can start talking about it, you can start seeing who's doing well and who's not doing well, and then how are people shifting that over time.
And I think the assumption is, because I'm a glass half full kind of girl, and I believe that most people are genuinely wanting to do the right thing and don't intentionally discriminate. I know there are exceptions, but generally speaking, and I think what happens before we measure is we make the assumption that what we're doing is fair and equitable, because we want it to be fair and equitable. We didn't design it to be anything other than fair and equitable. But what we don't then understand are the barriers that we haven't faced ourselves. So I think before the gender reporting was made compulsory, I think a lot of employers thought, well, of course we pay fairly across genders, because we have the same salary for each particular job role, so it must be fair, it must be working. And it's only when you actually just look under the surface and think, but who is in those roles that have those salaries, and what about the differentiation between part-time roles and full-time roles, and what about the opportunities to get to those higher paying roles? And it's only when you look at the nuances of things that what seems obvious, well, of course we pay men and women the same. Actually, when you have to do that measuring and that reporting and look under the surface, you can see, we thought we were, but actually we're not. And there's a huge difference that we weren't even aware of. And that's the same for race. It's the same for disability. It's the same for LGBTQIA+. It's an assumption that we want this to be fair. We designed it to be fair, so it is fair. But we don't know unless we actually measure these things. And we're never going to get, and a lot of, organizations we work with will monitor candidates and employees around race, around gender, sometimes around LGBTQIA+, but sometimes not disability. And they'll say, but people don't always, they're not always honest about it. Well, no, but people aren't always honest about LGBTQIA+ either, because of the risks of being discriminated against. But I think monitoring for any protected characteristic gives a really important message that says this is important to us. And we know that people will say, prefer not to say or lie initially, But the very fact that we're measuring it gives out a message that this is important to us, and we want to lessen those prefer not to say over time, so that people feel psychologically safe to say, oh yeah, I'm dyslexic, oh yeah, I have a mental health condition.
And absolutely right. So people often, in my experience in talking to disabled people who are in employment, particularly those with hidden impairments, will say that, well, the reason I don't disclose is because I've had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Or I worry that if I disclose, it will be used against me. So I think it's down to the business to then create that culture and environment that normalizes the conversation about disability and barriers, and kind of shows how it will support people to overcome the barriers so that you can flourish in your employment. And one, and so the idea of pay gap reporting is one measure, but it's part of a package of things that you do to create that normalization and culture. So people think, actually, I should disclose because I can see my employer genuinely trying to make a difference, so that I can be the very best I can be here.
Yeah, and also it's in the employer's interests, if they're reporting, to encourage people with hidden impairments to be open about it. So, we know that there are people in very senior positions who may have autism or mental health condition, but keep them very, very, very private because of that, perceived stigma, well, real stigma in some occasions. But actually, if within an organization, somebody in a senior position says, I haven't mentioned this before, but actually I have this mental health condition, or I'm autistic, or I'm dyslexic, or whatever it might be. That immediately gives permission for everybody else in the organization to feel safe. Oh, well, you're being open about it and you're all the way up there, so it's going to be fine for me to be open about mine. And just something really quick and simple like that can make a massive difference.
Role models are so important, aren't they? And until you see someone that reflects your experience, it's very hard to be, it can be really difficult to open up about it. I remember in my first job, which was working for a local authority, I'm a wheelchair user. I couldn't really hide the fact that I'm a wheelchair user. It was impossible. But I never saw anybody else who I could reflect on and say, oh yeah, how's your experience been? What have you done? And so you were kind of on your own.
Yeah.
Because everyone else, from my kind of visual perception, was that they were non-disabled people. No one was talking about it. And so you think, well, I can't talk about it. And the only time I ever talked about how my health condition affected me was when it was a real issue that I couldn't overcome and hide. And therefore it became quite a difficult thing. Oh, I've got to go to my manager and ask to have a conversation about my health need and how that's affecting me in work and what adjustments they're going to have to make, rather than it being a far more open, inclusive conversation about these are the barriers that we experience at work and how are you going to remove them and how can we work together. So it does create that. So Jane, we've only got to number 1 on the employment charter.
Oh yes, yes. So we're running out of time. So the second one is about supported employment and supported internships.
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of supported internships since I saw them working at National Grid.
Oh yeah.
And they were fairly early on, I think, adopters of supported internships. And I remember going to meet some of the young people who'd done these supported internships and the team around them. And actually it had started off as this is from National Grid's perspective, this is something that we can do that's going to be really good and helpful and make a contribution. And ended up being something that they thought, oh my God, this is so good for National Grid. This isn't about us doing the right thing. This has been so beneficial. And the teams who'd been involved in these supported internships were going to their managers and saying, please, can we do this again? Because it's been so beneficial for the team, for the organization generally. And, it's such a great case study. And I remember on that visit, when I went to see them, there was a young man who was autistic and had been taken on as a supported intern. And while he was in I think it was the marketing section, they had been writing a blog, which had been hopefully it's been geared at engaging the local community and the public generally in the work that was being done at National Grid. So there'd be that engagement with customers and the public. And he noticed that they'd never made the blog public. So it had only been, and they wondered why they weren't getting much engagement, but it had only actually been circulated within National Grid, which is why it hadn't been. And had he not been there, that would never have been picked up by anybody. So, the thought that we're doing these poor disabled people a favour turned into, we need more like this because, this is the kind of talent we need within National Grid. And it turned the whole conversation on its head. And, I think if you speak to any employer that's taken on supported internships, supported employment, it's been an incredibly positive experience for everybody, not just for the supported employee. And, there's no reason why, every organisation couldn't be doing things like that.
So, I mean, that's one that any employers listening to this could really look into and say, well, how do I get access to running a supported apprenticeship or internship in my place of work? And just very quickly, supported internships are a proven method of supporting, and you mentioned this earlier, that someone with a learning difficulty, in terms of numbers of people in work, it's only 6% of that population of working age who are actually in work. Supported internships are a proven way of supporting someone with a learning disability in a workplace to learn the role, learn the task through all sorts of techniques, one of them being systematic instruction training with a job coach who basically supports that individual until they've got the job and they understand it. And all the data shows that someone on a supported internship through the end of it end up often outperforming non-disabled people for all sorts of reasons, really interesting reasons. I remember I placed someone, so in my previous role before DRUK, I used to run supported internship programs in West London, and we placed some in one of the NHS trusts. And this young man, he was doing surgical equipment prep. So these are, highly specialized bits of equipment that are used in surgery. So it's really important that you get it right. And the initial fear from the employer was, this young person's going to get it wrong. They're not going to be able to follow the rules. And this is a life and death issue for someone on the operating table. At the end of the process, they were saying, this person outperforms my other employees because they just get on with the task. They never deviate. They follow the guidance and instructions to the letter. They don't have all these conversations and go off for short breaks. And they're outperforming their own, their colleagues. It was wonderful to see that shift. And it meant that young man, he's got, a job for life and can progress now.
But also his employers now won't be so negative about employing people with learning disabilities because they've done it and they've proved that it works. It works really well.
So the ask in the charter to government is that we want them to increase these proven methods that really genuinely have a long-term impact. I'm saying to employers, well, if you've not thought about supported internships, find out, have a look, contact yourself, Jane, or us, and we can tell you about who to speak to. Yeah. Then number 3 is reform of access to work. So we've talked about it a bit earlier about what it is. So access to work is a government scheme designed to bring in support. It can be equipment, it can be human support, it can be other bits, other types of support that kind of level the playing field a bit for a disabled employee in the workplace. It's a potentially, it is a fantastic, I use it all the time. I use it for my support to get to work and travel in work. But there are some, issues, it being quite bureaucratic, as you mentioned earlier. They still rely on, you have to sign a piece of paper once a month. And through the pandemic, they went digital and now they've gone back to paper for some reason. Yes. It can be crazy. But also, we know that in big organizations, if an employee either gets moved to another role within the business or, has a promotion and goes into another manager, often you have to be reassessed for your support needs when actually your support needs are the same. And this idea that if you've had an assessment and you change employer, the bulk of your assessment should just go with you and the support should just go with you, rather than having to go through the whole process again every time.
3 months for it to arrive.
Absolutely. How many of us want to enter a job and then think, right, I can't really do the whole of my job for about 3-4 months while all this support comes in place? It's not good for anybody, not good for the individual. It's certainly not good for them. It's not good for the employer. And it often then puts employers off to say, well, I'm going to have to, for 4 or 5 months while we work all this out, how am I going to cover my work? So it's a bit of reform we're saying to government around this area.
Yeah, for sure. And the next one's disability confident, isn't it? And again, that's something that organizations, employers listening to this can do anyway. So a number of organisations, and there was a big sort of target, I think, in DWP to get organisations signed up to level 1, which is just, a 5-minute thing online, and you commit to doing some things. But then years and years later, those same employers were still on level 1 and hadn't really done anything very much. And then level 2 is where you're starting to actually implement good practice. And level 3 is where you are externally assessed to make sure you are, implementing the practice that you say you are. And so really the ask is that government would say, if you sign up to level 1 and you don't progress, you lose your level 1 because you're not demonstrating that commitment that you've signed up to, which is fair enough. But again, for any employer, you don't have to wait for government to say you need to do this or we'll take it off you. If you are committed to disability equality, then there's no reason why you shouldn't be trying to progress through to level 2 and level 3. We're level 3. I'm sure you're level 3. I still have some concerns about how level 3 is assessed because it's not really moderated. I am really, really robust. If an organisation says to me, we're doing these things, I say, well, let me talk to your disabled employees and find out how it's working in practice. Whereas other assessors might say, yeah, okay, I'll take your word for it. Here's the badge. And so that, I think, needs to be moderated. But as an employer, for me, it's not just about the badge, it's about the practice and actually making sure that we're doing things that do level the playing field for disabled candidates and employees. And so the desire to get to level 3 shouldn't just be, oh, we've got a nice shiny badge now. It should be, we're putting these things into practice. We know we're doing it because an expert's come in and validated what we're doing, or they've suggested we do more or whatever. And even then, becoming a leader doesn't mean you've got it all right and that's it, you can relax. It's still a continuous improvement journey. I know that we're learning new things and implementing new things all the time.
Absolutely. And it's a continual journey. And at the moment, part of the issue with this scheme is that, as you said, you can even be a leader status and never actually employ a disabled person.
Yes.
What you're basically saying is we've looked at all of our processes and we've made some changes, but have you employed anybody as a result? And kind of what we're saying to government at the moment and and actually the disability strategy that was released last year did talk about this idea of looking at the disability confidence scheme and saying, should there be another level above that, or should it be just reform of the existing levels to say, and going in with the first item on this charter, that you should be required to report on what difference did this make? As you say, just having a label, the logo on your website as a way of trying to attract people will very quickly work out that actually it's just a badge and their experience was terrible anyway.
And I think the credibility of disability confident within the disability community is pretty low because we know that, the previous 2 ticks symbol was, never really monitored. So we were a 2 ticks employer, but nobody ever came to check that we weren't discriminated. We weren't, but we could have been, and we'd still have had the 2 tick symbol. So it's got some degree of skepticism, but I think if it was reformed and that was really communicated, then maybe it would carry more weight and disabled candidates might think, well, actually, I'm going to apply to those organisations that are disability confident because I know that I'm going to have a better experience there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The next one is leveraging government procurement. So just before this call, I was talking to an employer who we're engaging with, and we were just talking about procurement. I mean, they've got a turnover of about 80 million and they've got 4,000 staff, and they've never looked at what impact can they have in trying to work with more inclusive businesses just through the amount of procurement that they actually do. And they do quite a significant amount of procurement. And so this is us saying to government procure billions of pounds worth of procurement every year for all sorts of things. And actually, before giving out any contract from government, it should have elements of equality and equity built in, and disability equality should absolutely be in there. So, for example, saying to part of the process for tendering for a government contract should be that you are either already on the disability confidence ladder and that you're working your way up and show us the evidence, or that you've made an absolute commitment that within the first 6 months you'll get on that journey. To looking at how many, do you monitor how many disabled people are employed in your business? If not, that you commit to bringing that in within a time frame, and then to report on that. So government actually, just through procurement, could
Oh,
leverage
overnight it would
significant,
make a huge difference.
massive change. I mean, if you just look at, we're in London, and everyone's talking about the Elizabeth line. If you just imagine the billions that have been spent, and if that was part of the procurement process, that all of the contractors, and there must be thousands of contractors who've been involved in delivering this, who, if every one of them had an element of this in their contracts, how many more disabled people could have been in work?
Absolutely.
How much more kind of long-term impact would have had on those businesses? Government procurement is incredibly powerful. We don't use it. Government doesn't use it as a lever, we don't think. And so that's what we're saying to them, is use it as a lever to bring about some of these big changes that you could.
Definitely. And we know that this works in practice. HS2, I know they're kind of a government organisation, but they have chosen to look at their procurement policies, and they really work well with their supply chain in terms of saying, we want evidence that you're either doing or planning on doing something around disability, all the protected characteristics, but disability is very much in there. And then they don't just say do it or we won't work with you. They then offer training and support to that supply chain, so that they can, do what HS2 are expecting them to do. And that works really well, because they do that with their tier 1 suppliers, and then their tier 1 suppliers will do that with their supply chain, and on it goes. And we know it works because a lot of the construction companies that work with HS2 are also now working with Evenbreak, for, I think, the right reasons, because they recognise that it's the right thing to do. But we did have one, who won't be named, construction company, come to us and say, we need to advertise on your site because HS2 want us to. Now, all right, that was kind of compliance rather than trying to do the right thing. But, what we've learned over the years is, even if organisations employ disabled people for what you and I would call the wrong reasons, they then realise, oh my God, that was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. And actually look at all this talent. And then they start doing it for the right reasons. So there's a place, I think, for that requirement. If we're going to work with you, you've got to really show some determination in this area.
I agree. And it is about bringing people along the journey with you, isn't it? There's no point in saying to someone, well, because you haven't done it, we're not even going to engage with you. They're exactly the people that you do want to engage with, because they're the ones you want to shift, to say, let's show you why this is brilliant for your business.
Otherwise, we're preaching to the converted all the time, aren't we?
Absolutely. And that's how you bring about change. And it leaves that kind of long-term legacy within those businesses of that. So yeah, absolutely. So that's number 5. Number 6 is the idea of workplace adjustments. So we're what the charter's saying to government is, it needs to require employers to notify employees on decisions regarding reasonable adjustment requests within 2 weeks. Now, we actually tested this out with businesses, and businesses themselves said, actually, we should be able to do this in 2 weeks, because we were actually thinking businesses are going to say, oh no, 2 weeks is too quick. Give us 4 weeks or whatever. But actually, businesses were saying we want to do it quicker, and so we're saying to government that should just be the requirement, that if an employee asks for an adjustment, they should have a response quickly, not months and months and months go by while they're waiting around for that adjustment. And the option to work flexibly should be a day 1 requirement and a legal default for every job.
For me, I don't understand why that's not there already, because I'm thinking, not just of the employers that we work with, but of Evenbreak itself. If we had an office in London and we were to say to all of our employees, right, well, when you start, you've got to come into the office every day, but we'll look at remote working in a few months. We wouldn't be able to employ anybody. I would be the only employee. It just wouldn't work. We have, people in Scotland, in Devon, who just could not do that. So they wouldn't be able to have that job. So why would you say you've got to do this impossible thing for a few weeks and then we'll think about being flexible, when actually what you want is that talent? So it would make sense to offer it from day 1. If that's going to work for the employee and for the business, why wouldn't we do that?
And yeah, exactly. And we talk about kind of reasonable adjustments, and that's a legalistic kind of approach to it, because that's what it says in the Equality Act. But always push organizations to say, just look at them as workplace adjustments for everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just disabled people that need adjustments. It's the parent, it's the new parent, it's the carer, or whoever it might be. Everybody needs some kind of adjustment, because not everyone can just fit in with the 9 to 5 standard way of working, that we think that's the standard way of working.
Yeah.
But if anything we've learned and benefited from the pandemic, it is that we can be far more flexible. It can work, can be creative, and structure
it work
things
much better than the way we worked before.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it also goes on, this workplace adjustment one also talks about, and that's why we've called it workplace adjustment rather than reasonable adjustments, because that's a legal aspect of it, is to both allow people to work more flexibly, but introduce stronger rights to paid disability leave for assessment, rehab, training. Really, for example, with me, with my health condition, I often have to go for hospital tests or hospital treatment. And should I have to use my annual leave for that? And I would be arguing, well, no, because that's part of my lived condition that I can't get away from. It's not something I'm not going away for a day somewhere. I'm going in for essential treatment. And really, that should just be part of additional day off that you get in recognition of a workplace adjustment, and making that an absolute requirement. And then also to
disability leave is different from sick leave or annual leave, isn't it? It's not because you're necessarily ill. It may be, but it may be that we have people who might need equipment mending or fixing or servicing or whatever it might be. That means they need to travel somewhere for the day. And it doesn't seem fair to then say, oh yeah, well, that's going to be your annual leave entitlement taken off, or even sick leave, because it's not sick leave. Yeah,
exactly. I in the winter, if I get the flu, then I'm sick like any of my colleagues. But my disability related, my health condition related ones are different. Absolutely. Should we go on to, where are we up to? 7?
Yep.
So working with disabled people and their representatives. So good employers, and you've talked about the many good that work with you, I think often already are talking to their employees and have got staff networks and are actively engaged with disabled people to kind of make sure that how the employer is structured and how their employment is structured is flexible and reasonable and is working for people. This one is talking about that the government should require employers to consult and negotiate with disabled people and their representatives on disability equality matters, and provide trade union equality representatives and disability champions with statutory right to time off to perform their duties. So it's just having that internal representation, so that it's not about a single employee having to kind of argue for changes. It's actually as a collective and representatives doing that on your behalf and actually making that a requirement.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. The last Evenbreak Explores we did was last week, and we were talking about the importance of lived experience and co-production and co-designing things. And it's just, again, it's a no-brainer. We've had generations of, men talking to men about what women want, or white people talking to white people about what black people need, and non-disabled people talking to non-disabled people about what disabled people need. And I'm hoping that now it's 2022, we've kind of seen that doesn't work very effectively. And for me, if you're designing a service or an employment policy or whatever it might be, product, whatever it is, for the population generally, you have to reflect that population. So, for us, for example, if we're looking at using different technology, we will make sure that we use the lived experience of our own employees to test that technology before we pay for it. So we have 2 people on the team who use screen readers. And if we're going to be looking for, I don't know, a learning management system or a new job board or whatever it is, we would say to them, can you have a look at this first? Use your screen readers, tell us whether it's accessible or not. Because otherwise what we're going to do is not know, buy the technology, and then afterwards find out, oh, this doesn't work. We're going to either have to cancel that contract and start all over again, or retrofit something which is never as good and is always more expensive. So getting it right from the start is just a business essential, really. And so that means hearing the voices of everybody who's going to be impacted by it. And that has to include disabled people, because we're 1/5 of the population.
Absolutely.
Again, it's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not difficult to understand. It's if you want to make sure that things work for people, ask those people.
Absolutely. And as I said right at the beginning, all of these 9 things are not earth-shatteringly new or just something no one's ever thought about. We've all probably thought about them. It's just bringing them all together to make, sometimes it's the obvious stuff that makes the biggest difference. And the next one is exactly that. So it's about advice and support. Employers time and time again say to us, and I'm sure say to you and come to you, because they just don't know. It's a bit of the unknown, and there's no one obvious place you can go to say, where is all the information about what is available to me as an employer about support and information and knowledge around, if I'm employing a disabled person, what should I be doing? What's good practice? What's the minimum requirements? A one-stop shop, as it's called in here, that government should create that, a portal to provide that information, advice, and guidance on kind of recruiting, retaining disabled people, but also making sure that disabled people have access to what their rights are under the law. So kind of one place to where both employers and employees can go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, a lot of this information is out there, but it's all over the place. It's in different websites. It's on different government portals. It can often be a bit confusing and contradictory sometimes. And therefore, it's kind of saying, let's bring it all together in one place that's then maintained.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think in the meantime, for any employers watching this, thank goodness there are organisations like Disability Rights UK and Evenbreak, because at least we are available to support employers. There's some support out there on the disability confident, but it's minimal, I think, really, and that could really be fleshed out a lot and actually provide what you're suggesting. And there are other organisations like Business Disability Forum who have lots of advice and guidance and resources for employers, but they're having to look for you and me and them, and in some cases pay for that. Whereas, as you say, if that was readily available, then some of that fear about, oh, we don't know what we're doing, would be taken away, because there it would be. Yeah,
and at the beginning of this charter, we talk about employers that 250 plus, but we know that most employment is in the SME, so smaller than that. And a lot of SMEs don't have HR teams and people like that. So actually providing easily accessible information to that sole trader or partnership or small business, local business, who are generally can make adjustments and are really wanting to kind of be creative in how they deliver their work. Having this sort of website would be really useful.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the next one, National Progress on Disability Employment. So again, we mentioned right at the beginning, is that there is an increasing numbers of disabled people. So through the pandemic and long COVID, there are various estimates out there of 1 million more people who would fall technically under the definition as disabled people. And what this bit of the charter is saying to government, that they need to take into account the prevalence of disability when looking at the employment gap. Because if you're using old ways of measuring to talk about the numbers of people in work, and then therefore you're missing out all the new people who are either newly disabled or fit a definition, the number is no longer accurate.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of the one that the university talks about is prevalence corrected monitoring, which is kind of what it says. You look at the prevalence of disability and then you correct the figures based on that. So you're looking at the total population of that prevalence corrected one.
Absolutely. And I think also, I mean, that it wasn't that long ago that everybody retired at 60 or 65.
Yeah.
But actually people are working much longer now, and we know the older we get, the more likely we are to acquire a disability or long-term health condition. So if you look at the working population, the number of disabled people within that population is growing because the age of that is growing. So, and that's going to continue. Long gone are the days that people can retire at, 55 or whatever. I know there are a few people around, but most of us aren't in that.
No, and it's funny, Jan, I was looking at getting a mortgage yesterday, and the broker said, oh, do you know you can get a mortgage to 75 now?
Wow.
I'm
assuming that people will still have incomes until they're 75 that they can
I'm still going to be working till 75. So, but yeah, absolutely. We're working longer, we're living longer. but also there are things like the pandemic happening that are creating just, a prevalence of disability in people.
Absolutely, and things like pollution, and there are all sorts of factors around that really are creating. And I think we're here to say that becoming disabled is far from a tragedy, and it's not something you choose, but certainly you can lead perfectly fulfilling lives. But we still would want everyone to have the same access to employment, to progress within employment as everybody else. So that disability employment gap needs to be accurate and reflect the population as it is now, not the way we might have measured things years ago when the working population was between 16 and 60. That's no longer the case.
Yeah, I look at disability as part of a human condition.
Yeah.
It's just part of who we are as human beings. It's not about them and us.
No, absolutely. It's like some people have got blue eyes, some people have got brown eyes, some people are short, some people are tall. It's just another factor, isn't it? That's another characteristic. And that the difference, I think, is that it can affect anybody at any time, whereas most, your eye color tends not to change and your height tends not to change. The difference, I think, with a disability that people perhaps are a bit scared of is that it can happen to anyone at any time, and it doesn't discriminate. You can be rich, poor, black, white, male, female, and you could still have a stroke or MS or a mental health condition or whatever it might be. So those are the 9 suggestions for government. But I think we've pulled out of there lots of positive things that employers can do as well without waiting for the government to take action. Because to be honest, if we wait for the government to take action, it might take a little bit longer than we would hope. And so if there's any, we've come to the end of our time actually, but if there are any quick questions or comments from anybody, now's your time. But if you want to ask questions later on, or you think of questions later on, or you're watching this as a recording, I'm sure Kamran would be happy for you to get in touch with him at Disability Rights UK. And of course, you can always get in touch with us at Evenbreak. And I think for me, the one takeaway would be, don't wait for the government to act, do the right things now. And while you're doing it, become a signatory, because if you're doing it, you may as well be open about doing it. And one of the benefits of that is it's another signal to disabled candidates and employees that this is something that's important to you as an organization.
Yeah, and you're in excellent company with the kind of signatories we've already got. You're joining a pool of fantastic employers.
Shout some out, Kamran. Have you got them in front of you?
I can pull them up in a second. So we've got, so as I mentioned, McDonald's earlier. We've got, just trying to think of the ones that people might know about. So look. So people will know people like MenCap, Microlink, NCVO, Post Office is on there. Some of the big national charities are on there as well. United Response is on there.
I think it's important that what we might call mainstream employers get on there as well, because this isn't an issue about charity.
No,
it's an issue about talent, and it's as important to private businesses as it is to government and charities. And I'd say be a trailblazer here and put your name to this and say that actually this is something that we think is important, because our business depends on it, and our growth depends on it. So if you're interested, have a look at the website, which Toby put up earlier on, and get in touch and find out more if you're interested. So thank you for attending. Thank you, Kamran, so much for your time again today. Good friend of Evenbreak. And thanks very much to the BSL interpreter and the live captioner, and to Toby behind the scenes. And we'll see you on the next Evenbreak Explores. Thanks very much.